to talk about cable for 1 second? So major labels, though, they didn't get disrupted. Or, sorry, they got disrupted, but they didn't go away. Is cable gone? Is cable just going to die and become completely obsolete? Or does cable kind of take its slaps and then come back?
I don't think it's ever coming back like it came back before. You know, I think there are places that cable remains. I mean, it's like a lot of things. I think until the last of the boomers and pre-boomers die, there will be some cable.
Right.
The debate has always been, you know, say the 28-year-olds that work for me or work for you, television is, you know, an iPad rested on their chest through a Wi-Fi signal.
100%.
There's been some debate that, like, when you have kids, you will move back to a lean back experience. We're both parents. I can't speak to your daughter. My son has no interest in screen size, is still irrelevant to him.
Yeah.
He is as happy holding my phone when he's in the chair at the barber shop, as holding his iPad while he's having some lunch, as sitting in the living room with a 75-inch screen. Literally, screen size is irrelevant to him. So I'm not sure that ever happens. But things happen slower than you think, and then they happen faster, but the absolute death of something takes longer. I mean, AOL still exists.
It's true.
Yahoo still exists.
Yeah.
Not at the scale they ever did before. So cable's not going to be gone for a long, long time until, like, potentially the next technical disruption. But, you know, cable's ability to mint money, that was a 40% margin business.
Yeah.
It doesn't exist anymore.
What about corporate media? Where do you think that's going?
What's your definition of corporate media?
That's a good question. So we're going to say like the CNNs or the Fox Newses or any of the major networks that are whatever people listen to. I don't have a stake in the whatever they subscribe to of those channels. But I also mean like kind of legacy media, legacy papers, all of those things. Like seeing things like, let's say one of my favorite news sources is Breaking Points. I love Breaking Points, and I think it's like really good reporting, really balanced, really smart. I like the format of the longer conversations. It's all on YouTube or on all the different streaming platforms. That seems to be, I don't want to say supplanting, but they have the ability to like outmaneuver a lot of the old models of delivering news. Can legacy media like kind of hold its own? Can it maneuver? Can it find a way to survive and thrive again?
On the macroeconomic entertainment side, for example, I actually think we're seeing a return to legacy media. And you sort of say why. Disney has a couple of things that say Netflix doesn't. Disney disproportionately owns incredibly powerful IP, right? And Disney has a multi-touch point flywheel. Right, so somehow the bundle to Disney could not just include, you know, ESPN Plus for me, Disney Plus for my son. You know, they're going to clearly complete the rest of the Hulu transaction for our whole family. That flywheel can include the parks, right? And you think about all the powerful IP that drives that. One of the dings on Netflix is for outspending every legacy media company on production in the last half decade or decade. How much AAA IP did they create? I mean, they created House of Cards, which is over, and Stranger Things. And how many other IP? Like, we could keep rattling on our fingers for how much powerful IP Disney owns. And the value of that IP cannot be discounted. What we've learned a little bit is maybe Silicon Valley knew how to distribute things better than Disney, but Disney still knows how to make things better, right? There was a classic analysis. I think the Ankler did it, which is the new media source to your point, about how Netflix got fewer Rotten Tomato scores for every dollar spent than any other studio in the game. They were the least effective creator of quality. All that money got them very little quality. And no surprise, HBO had like the greatest return on Rotten Tomato scores.
Yeah, totally.
Where my bifurcated view of legacy media comes in is, it seems in the last few years, at least on the news side, all the venture capital and all the investment has gone towards what I would call alternative news sources. However, those alternative news sources, the bias seems to have been no bias. Like, there's been a disproportionate push to create the unbiased, centrist, whatever you want to call it, right? That the world feels a bit fed up with I have to choose between MSNBC and Fox.
Right.
And so if you think about Semaphore, Axios, the Free Press, right, where Barry Weiss and her wife like resigned from the New York Times, where they felt like they couldn't tell the stories they wanted to tell. And at least for the people writing checks for news today, they were disproportionately interested in writing checks towards what they believed were a centrist view of the world and less of a polarizing view of the world.
It's totally fascinating to me because, growing up, like the news is the news, right? And it's like, whatever, like it's like, even when I was a kid, like people saying you can't trust the news now, it's like people were saying that 40 years ago. I remember hearing that when I was like a little kid. But as I've gotten older, I just feel that there's sensationalism has really, because it's like you're constantly bombarded with media in every way that you interact with the world. And people are gonna have all sorts of opinions, and I'm largely like, I'm largely okay with interacting with a lot of different kinds of opinions. There's some things I don't want to interact with, but I'm largely okay with that. But what I'm really drawn to is being able to hear larger pieces of news or deeper conversations that can get more into nuances and give you more information. Or if I have the time to like dedicating myself to reading something that's a little bit like longer or a little bit deeper or a little bit more researched. And this isn't a hack on legacy media necessarily or legacy news necessarily, because I think it's like if you've got let's say like a 5-minute segment on something, you're only going to be able to hit like the most salacious or the most like biggest things, right? More long form conversations are the ones that I find the most interesting, the most educational, the ones where I can draw an opinion from. I can build my own opinion instead of feeling like here's a prepackaged opinion that we're giving you and you can take it or turn it down. I don't have like a good or a bad opinion about it. All I can say is like where my attention is drawn now is more to longer format discussion-based conversations or longer format deeper dive writing. And that seems to be more present now than before. It does seem more centrist with like different perspectives put in there. And I tell you, I can't even imagine the last time I put on or picked up something that came from kind of like a traditional news source, like kind of like the big names, or turned on like kind of a cable news show. I can't even think the last time. Not because I dislike it or I'm against it. It's just not where if I'm going to spend 5 minutes on something or 10 minutes on something, that's not where I'm spending my time. Not in a negative way. Are they going to, from your perspective, take this trend and be able to like kind of reestablish themselves, or are they going to go away eventually?
I think it's very hard to answer. I think for whatever reason, our society is still powered by outrage. I think
it's too much, man. I can't barely even engage with social media. It's just people have a total right to be upset and should be upset about lots of things. But it's just like I feel like I turn on social media and it's like constantly, and I can't. There's so much challenging stuff going on for sure. And there is so much beautiful stuff going on. And I just want to have a balanced approach to life. Sorry to interrupt. When you said the rate.
You're right. I mean, the world is still powered by outrage. Everybody's tribal. And nobody has any room for you to use the word nuance. Nobody has the word for nuance. And even more dangerously, nobody has the room for multiple things can be true at once. We live in a very complicated world where multiple things can be true at once. Every day, I'm a great CEO and I'm a terrible CEO. Every day, I'm a great husband and a terrible husband. Every day, I'm a great father and a terrible father. But we live in a world where we don't want to sit in the nuance of anything.
I'm going to push on something there, though. I feel like it's changing. I feel that there's like a fatigue that has set in a bit about this, because it's like people, there's so much shit going on right now that people should be upset, and because we have so much access to information that previously wouldn't have been as accessible, it's like, yeah, people can be upset. And also there's just shit where you're like, fuck, we've had 100 years of this or 50 years of this or 20 years of this or 5 years of this, of whatever thing that we're we're talking about longstanding problems that don't seem to be changing or improving or maybe getting worse. I understand and totally, I celebrate the idea of people taking the streets, pushing for change and all of that. Where I have the concern here is like engaging with stuff that, like let's say the phone here, it's just like a portal of intensity that you're also kind of addicted to, right? And it's like life has got a lot of space for anger, outrage, all of those things, and then interacting with something that's like too much, it's almost like you're mainlining that constantly. It feels like to me that people increasingly are becoming a bit fatigued, and they still care about the things they care about, from whatever political perspective they come from. But maybe I'm starting to feel a little bit more of a sense of that idea of nuance, where people are like, well, actually, nuance is a good thing, and nuance isn't maybe a good thing when is not an easy thing when you're making a post. So maybe you don't make the post, or maybe you make the post and you take the time to do it. Or maybe you just say, hey, maybe no one's gonna actually read this nuanced post, and maybe I just don't engage at all. Maybe I talk to my friend or my neighbor, or I sit on it, I think about it more. It just feels more so, and I could be totally wrong, it almost feels like society's put on the brakes a little bit and been like, okay, we're all very angry all the time. Like, let's bring it back. And that's what I would like to believe, and that's what I'd like to hope. To give it from like a business model perspective, I can understand why things that create outrage have become a model for media, because it's like that's how you get the clicks, and you're getting your clicks, that's how you get your advertising. I don't think anyone here is evil or has done the wrong thing or anything like that. It's like this whole thing is built to not serve discourse, and it's not because people are trying to create like tribalism or anger or everyone hate each other. It's just like from a business model perspective. But can that business model survive and thrive? Like, can it continue or can it realign?
It's hard to say. I'm a little less optimistic than you are, because I think that business was created to fuel clicks and engagement, which drive ad dollars or direct-to-consumer conversions or all that stuff. But it also feeds self-affirmation to the other side of the equation, right? To the listener, to the viewer. And I still don't feel that most people want their views challenged, regardless of where you sit in the political spectrum. I don't think people want to be questioned that this party that they believe in, whichever party that is, or this person that they believe in, or this decision that was made could be questioned. So I'm a little less optimistic. I still see a much more tribal world out there